Hello, and thanks for checking out this PCG level builder tool. This is built for anyone looking to block out or design full levels while also reducing a lot of the monotony and more repetitive tasks. It is also meant to work with a wide variety of game types and camera modes, like an isometric or top-down fixed camera, third person with a free cam, or even first person. This also works with or without most of Unreal 5's other features like Lumen, Megalights, and Nanite. Let's dive into a fairly quick walkthrough of the main use of the tool and setting it up. To start, look under the PCG level builder folder and then the PCG folder, and this is where the main blueprints for this tool are. Starting off, you'll always need one of these BP level builders placed in your world. It's kind of the main parameter holder as well as all the PCG graphs. And then you can start drawing out your level with the level path or the level room. I'm starting here with the path. You can draw it out like any other spline tool. Alt dragging will add a new point. I'm adding a room here. You can combine rooms and paths in pretty much any combination. It's important to try to keep the spline shapes roughly at the same height. There is some smoothing that can even it out, so you don't have to be exact, but the closer the better. You don't have to start from scratch with each of these paths and rooms either. You can always alt drag an existing one in the world and essentially duplicate it right there, and then you can edit it further. Back on the BP level builder, you'll notice once you adjust any of the values there, the bounds should update to fill and cover most of your paths and rooms. If it doesn't, you can always hit the update bounds button. To start the generation itself, you'll need to set a mesh set. You can create one of these on your own later, and I'll show you that, but for now, just select one that's included with the set. The first time you run this in a new map, it might not generate immediately, but there is a quick way to force it, and you should only have to do this once for a new map. In the details panel, if you have the BP level builder selected, scroll down through its own components till you see the PCG main graph that I'm selecting here, and then you hit its generate button, and then you select the PCG spawner graph and hit that one's generate button, and it should be good from now on. As I mentioned, you can swap the mesh set pretty much any time and can very quickly see the difference between the block out or this cave demo that I've included. You can now continue drawing out your splines or duplicating new ones, or adding rooms. If you notice the bounds not updating like it's doing here, just select the BP level builder again and change any value or hit the update bounds to. There are also a few options on each path node. I'll let you change the width individually per path. They don't have to be the same. You can also change the width randomness, which means the outer curvature a little more or less extreme. Just do be careful going too far. If the curvature on the main path or these random edges gets too strong, it can leave gaps or kind of odd rotations. You can also adjust the seed value to get slightly different looks and placement. It's also a nice option if you do run into holes or gaps to quickly fix them. The only option on the room splines right now is for light placement, ceiling lights specifically. So if you want them more towards the center or closer to the wall, you can adjust this value per room. One handy reminder and kind of note here is that any of these parameters have hover tooltips. If you're ever curious or need a reminder of what anything does, just hover over them, and there's usually notes on both what they do as well as some usage tips. Let's dive into some of the options. First up here is the material swap. With this, you can swap any material on any of these actors and instances with any other material instance. You just have to pair them up, essentially, as they're. It acts like a search and replace for anything in the level. Next up is the path smoothing. If there are any really extreme curves in the path, This will try to even it out so each point matches up with anything next to it, so you don't get any weird stepping. But in some cases with really extreme banking like this, you might not want that, and instead reduce it to nothing, and it'll match the curve almost exactly. You usually want to turn this off with the landscape use as well. The world partition and snap to landscape options I'll cover later. Now we're on the medium and large decor chance, which tells you how many of the kind of taller path meshes that you want to swap out for even bigger decorative bits like these rocks and pillars. The jitter decor option is just for moving around these medium and large decor bits. You can also change the overall seed value at the top of this tool to get everything randomized even further. The remove path points option is more for when you're using this in conjunction with a landscape and you don't need the entire floor to be solid and completely filled out. The path random scale is just a random value per mesh on how much you want to allow it to squash or stretch any given piece, just to give you a little extra variety. Just careful not to go too far, it can be noticeable. The wall merge chance is just another bit of variety you can add. It's working with the single, double, and triple length walls in the mesh set. One thing to note here is that occasionally PCG will stop updating certain values, and sometimes you can get around that by scrolling back up to the top and hitting the clean and then regen PCG buttons. But other times you want to force it completely by hitting the clean and saving your level and reloading the level and then regen. That seems to refresh it completely. This wall facing value refers to how the tool decides to use either the back walls in the mesh set or the front walls that you're seeing here. It's more for the isometric and top-down game options. Next up is the ceiling options. And I'm going to swap this over to a landscape mesh set that I'd set up for another map I'll show you later. The base height is just where you want to start, which is basically the same height as your walls. Sometimes you can go a little lower. The additional height though refers to how far up the center of the ceiling goes. And just try not to push it too far, you'll see more gaps along the edges. More likely to see gaps within the ceiling itself. The height random is the maximum amount of undulation and extra variety you want to give to that ceiling curvature. Again, just trying to push it too far, you're more likely to get gaps. This is just a quick use of the river spline tool. It's mostly a spline mesh, but it applies to this river depth option. Wherever a river spline is, the path points will be pushed down by this amount. The bigger you make it, the more likely you'll see gaps and holes. So again, try to only go as far as your mesh will visually allow. Next up are the scatter meshes, which is a section in the mesh set that you can fill out with any kind of debris, rocks, leaves, anything just to fill out the level, little extra details. By default, the tool will randomly rotate them only on the Z-axis, but if you're using some individual meshes that can rotate in every direction without looking strangely, you can use this second option here. The random scale is similar to the other decor scale option as well, where you can stretch and squash these to give a little extra variety with even using just a few meshes. Let's do a quick dive into the light options here. You can set the color and intensity for all lights spawned by this, just in this quick shot here. The blueprints that are spawned though have their own default values, as well as a randomized color option that you can disable within that blueprint if you don't want this. It's more extreme with this pure red color now. Normally it would only be a very minor change. You have an option to spawn lights only on the back walls, or only on the front, or only on the ceiling, or combine them all. The ceiling lights will follow the path down the center on any of the path blueprints, but then on the room they use that second purple curve that I'd mentioned. You can scale it inward or out to push the ceiling lights more towards the center of the room or not. The height and spacing values are probably pretty obvious, but this random disable chance is kind of a nice option to, again, just add a little more variety. It will actually disable the light and the emissive on any actors that randomly get chosen. Now let's dive into doors and filling in the walls between path and room intersections. These BP level door placement objects can be placed anywhere that a wall used to be. The door actor will be placed roughly at the center of this door placement object, and you want to scale the door placement in the Y direction to roughly fill in the gap and cover all the walls. The main thing to note here is the rotation of this door placement actor is what determines what wall points it will keep and which direction it'll try to face them, so it doesn't bring back any perpendicular wall points. This one needs to be rotated just so because of the randomness of the curve of that path. I'll show you here. This system also works with landscapes, mostly in the way that you can disable the floor points, all or just some of them, and then snap the points directly to the landscape itself. The rest works about the same with landscapes as well, where you can combine any number of paths and rooms. Thanks for watching, and if you're interested in an even more in-depth guide on some of the extra features and blueprints, there's a link below.